over at BangTheBook.com. Lots of great content, lots of great resources available for you. Please make sure you check out all of the bowl game previews that we've got. Obviously, 5 bowl games here in the rearview mirror with the NFL taking a break until Saturday. Got a whole bunch of college football games coming up Tuesday through Friday here. We previewed those on yesterday's show with Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. So definitely make sure you go back and listen to yesterday's show. That was a full hour with Kyle talking college football and college basketball. A lot of fun there with that one. But we've got basketball stuff over at BangTheBook.com here today. We've got NHL coming up as well. We've got situational betting articles. You name it, we've got it over at BangTheBook.com, where we are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Don't forget about the videos I've been doing over on our YouTube page, and also our first guest today, Brian Blessing, will likely have a couple of videos coming up here for us either today or tomorrow for that YouTube page as well, so you want to make sure that you're checking those out. And finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSi Sports Book, where you can use that promo code BTB200 to get a 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. 2 guests on the program here today. The first, Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man? Brian, your phone's cutting out a little bit there. Not sure if it's on our end or maybe on yours. But in any event, good to have you back on the – Yeah, we're good now. We are all good. Thank you so much, man. Good to have you back on the program here. And Week 16 of the NFL, Brian, we're almost to the finish line for the regular season and got a lot of playoff implications going on here this weekend. So a lot of very motivated teams.
Oh, it's just insane the way this is all shaking out at the end. I mean, throw a blanket over some of these teams, the Pittsburgh, New England thing, all of a sudden, I think in the AFC, can we make the case? Clearly, somebody can step up and get hot in the playoffs, but the Chiefs, the Chargers, Pittsburgh gets the win over the Patriots, but the New England stubbing their toe a bit. Is power starting to shift here slowly but surely?
Well, we got to keep in mind here, too, that, when you've got these games with teams that are in must-win situations, you do generally see a little bit of inflation out there in the marketplace. I think maybe the Giants-Colts game has a little bit of that feel to it, with the Colts a 9-point home favorite. Of course, if Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't play, we saw what the Giants' offense can look like in last week's game when they got shut out. But you notice here that it looks like we've got a lot of people trying to guess the motivations of certain teams here this week. For example, Green Bay down from a 3.5-point favorite to a pick'em, and even in some places an underdog against the New York Jets. A lot of I want to say guesswork, maybe educated guesswork, going into the motivation levels for these teams this week.
Yeah, I mean, week to week, I would say to you on the 2 things you kind of discussed there leading into this, I don't think there was the inflation that should have been there on the Indy game last week with Dallas. I mean, Dallas got the win over the Eagles and had the cushion, and Indy is playing great football, and they were sitting there laying 3 with a really good defense, but their season was on the line in that game. Then the motivation aspect, you're looking at a team like Atlanta, which is a mess, and you're like, well, have they run for the bus, or is it going to be stat day and Ryan's going to light up Arizona and they're going to take it out on the Cardinals, which proved to be the case. But then there are others that just are rolling over, and you're like, I don't know what I'm getting out of these guys.
All right, well, let's talk about a game on Saturday night where I think we know exactly what we're going to get from both of these teams, Baltimore and the Chargers. Chargers 4.5-point favorite. Short week for the Ravens, making that long cross-country trip out to California. Obviously, for Baltimore, a huge game for the wild card, for the division, which there's still, a half game out there with the tie that Pittsburgh has. Huge game for the Ravens. Maybe not so much for the Chargers. Now, of course, they can win the AFC West, and they'd certainly love to do that. They're already in the playoffs as it is. So, for the Chargers in this spot, you kind of have to walk the fine line between, do we want to go balls out for the division and the bye, or do we want to just make sure that, with our already existing injury list, we don't make things too much worse? So I think it's a pretty interesting spot for a younger head coach in Anthony Lynn to have to go through here, trying to figure out what he wants to do this week with this Chargers team as a 4.5-point favorite.
I think the real Rubik's Cube for them will be in Week 17. But if I'm thinking about the Chargers here, if Gordon comes back, this team that's been playing great, showing a lot of heart and flying around with the ball, if Gordon comes back, well, then they're extremely lethal with both the running and passing game in the red zone. I would say this to you. If I'm the Chargers, I'm all in on this game, big time, because Kansas City's got to play on Sunday at Seattle. And Seattle's got to circle the wagons in that game, and that is a tough place to play. So I would think the Chargers are sitting there saying, hey, look, let's win this game and put some heat on Kansas City. So I don't think you're sitting there, they're human beings. They know what the line is. They know who's playing who. I think they realize Kansas City has a potential banana peel out there Saturday, and that to me would really lead to the Chargers being all in on this game.
I do think something that's interesting, and I understand the value of getting a week of rest. I totally get that, and I totally understand why teams want to do that. But I also think that there's some merit to just continuing to play week after week after week. And I don't think that the teams really think that way. I certainly don't think the players think that way. They would love to have that bye week there in the playoffs to nurse some of those bumps and bruises. But you kind of wonder with a team like the Chargers here, with how well they've been playing over such a long period of time, and again, we're thinking way far in advance here, I would kind of prefer the Chargers if I had a futures ticket or, really like the way that they're playing here. I would kind of prefer that they have to keep playing as opposed to getting that bye week. But, again, teams don't really think that way. They'd rather run the risk of coming out flat as opposed to, playing another game, having to win another game to win a Super Bowl, and then, of course, the injury situations as well. So I always find that dynamic interesting.
This one is really, really unique, Adam, in that the stakes are so high. I mean, you're talking about either being number one seed and home field through the playoffs or dropping to the 5 seed. I mean, the Chargers, they got to go and hope for the best. KC comes up short, probably specifically in that Seattle game. But I mean, the stakes are big here. I mean, a 1 seed to a 5 seed having to play an extra game. There's a lot on the line here, and we know the Ravens desperately need the game. You throw the travel into it, and Jackson on the road, a very tough foe. And then the number in that dead zone. I mean, this thing could go back and forth. I think it could go up and down throughout the course of the week.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the fact that the Chargers can secure home field advantage, and not only that, but none of these teams are close to them. So, if you don't have to travel here leading up to the Super Bowl, that's a fantastic thing for them. You're making everybody come out to you. Definitely a little extra added incentive there for that one. And I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here, sort of throwing out, some contrarian points of view to kind of get your take on them. I agree. The Chargers want to win this game. The Chargers want the number 1 seed. And also, too, I think the Chargers are very well positioned to win and cover in this game because you look at Baltimore here, and, yeah, it's great what Lamar Jackson's been doing, but who has Lamar Jackson doing it against? The Bengals, the Raiders, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Buccaneers. None of those teams have good defenses. The Chargers don't have a great defense, but they've got 2 of the better defensive ends in the league that can kind of contain Lamar Jackson a little bit. They've got some good players at the second level on defense. This is the biggest test for Lamar Jackson here. I'm not sure he passes it with flying colors.
Oh, no. Listen, I mean, there's so many angles in play here that make it tough for the Ravens. The one thing I would say, what travels well in the NFL, and that's defense. So, I mean, we're making all these cases for the Chargers here, but I would not discount, that Ravens defense. In Rivers has been spectacular, but there are games still. Phillip Rivers, he sometimes he gets squirrely. Listen, that game they won the other night. I mean, it was so lost in the shuffle, and then of course I put it out on Twitter, and then all the Twitter knuckleheads come back. Oh, he knew what he was doing. They won. Well, if you remember, they're driving. They have no timeouts. There's 25, 26 seconds left, and he runs, and he gets hit. and, slow it down, and it did kind of look like helmet to helmet. But they have a timeout, and he gets up and he's yelling at the referee for 10 seconds. And then they called their last timeout. Well, I mean, that could have cost them 2 throws into the end zone. They got it in there. But, Rivers is so emotional, and he still does some goofy things, So, I mean, if Baltimore can bait him a couple of times and that defense can, even maybe produce points, it's not like I'm completely discounting the Ravens' chances.
I think there are a lot of ways to go with this game. Like I said, I do like the Chargers a little bit just because of the step up in class for Lamar Jackson, but I completely agree with your point, and a very, very salient point at that defense does travel, and Baltimore does have a very, very good defense, which is, by and large, the reason why they're in this playoff hunt. I know Lamar Jackson has provided a spark, but even when you look at his game-by-game numbers, they're not off the charts ridiculous. He makes some plays, but the total package really doesn't look all that efficient to me. So that's why I am kind of looking at the Chargers a little bit in this spot. May wind up on my Super Contest card for this weekend, but we'll see how things go when the numbers are released and also with the news throughout the week here on the Melvin Gordon injury situation. Let's go to game 103-104 here, Brian. Buffalo and New England. New England, double-digit favorite, laying 13 or so here against the Bills. There are some 12.5s, also some 13.5, 14s out there. Not a great look for New England last week, losing that game to Pittsburgh. They've lost 5 games here this season, the first time in a very, very long time that the Patriots have lost 5 games. In fact, they have to go all the way back to 2009 for that. The Bills, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs in that running back room right now. What kind of effort you think we get from them this week?
I think you get a really good effort. And this whole season, and I know we spoke at the beginning of the year, I said I thought the Bills win-wise would regress, but it was all about developing Allen, and then next year they clear $60 million of cap space. They get some offensive linemen and some wide receivers. To their credit, they get rid of Kelvin Benjamin, who was a complete and utter waste of time. I can't believe Kansas City went and got him. But they've got young wide receivers that are starting to step in and make a little bit of noise and at least being open once in a while. The running game right now, it's a mash unit. But the defense, Adam, for this football team is really a really good story in the NFL. I mean, they got them to the playoffs last year. They kept them in the majority of games this season. Go to the first game that was played between the two this year. The final was 25-6. It looks like a nothing burger. That game was 12-6 deep in the fourth quarter before New England got a touchdown and then a pick six to cover the number like in the last minute. If Josh Allen had played that game, Buffalo would have beaten New England. I mean, it was awful. Derek Anderson played. It was ridiculous. That Buffalo defense frustrated Brady. I think Buffalo, shows up in this game, and I think again, it's what we said at the beginning of this, that the power is starting to shift. It wouldn't shock me if the Bills' mindset here is, listen, this is close to the end of the road for New England. Let's send a message for next year. We're not going to be an easy out, and we think the future is bright. I think Buffalo shows up. I really, really do. And that defense, there have been times when Brady lights them up, but there have been games where they really frustrated him. In that first game, Brady did nothing.
Yeah, and you look at New England here, since the 2010 season, laying double digits against the AFC East, they are 13-2 straight up, but they're only 8-7 against the spread. So it's not like they're going out there and blowing out the AFC East teams when they're expected to in a big favorite role. Also here for the Patriots this year, unless they come up with 2 pretty big blowout wins, they are favored to get one here this week, and then we'll see what they do in Week 17. They have not had a point differential below 100 since the 2005 season. So maybe this is a case where New England just isn't as good as we've seen in the past, and they're laying a number that implies that they are. And maybe they prove it to me. Maybe they show everybody that they are that good. I'm not really ready to believe it, though.
No, I think you're spot on with that. In fact, we were watching the game last Sunday with a bunch of people. Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet, Andy Isco from Gaming Today was there, and we were talking. That was kind of the topic. Is they used to get it done. I mean, you go back to the days with Troy Brown playing on both sides of the football. It's almost like plug in a guy here and they'll just get it done. But I think when Gronkowski's healthy. They're a monster because he is a red zone nightmare. It's sad almost. I mean, he's still a young guy, but I mean, Gronkowski just looks beat up, and you wonder if it's the end of the road for him. But they do. They really do. They look like they're a different animal. And honestly, I could see the Bills stepping up to the plate here in the last 2 weeks, wanting to embrace the role of spoiler. I don't know. It looks like that Miami loss might really have hurt their chances. But, boy, if that game ever meant anything to Miami next week, they'll be walking into a buzzsaw up in Buffalo. But I do. I think the Bills do show up here. And the one thing is, they have not – this will be New England's defense, the first look at Josh Allen. Now, Allen still makes mistakes, but I'm telling you, with his feet, and they got a pretty unique design here where they're running 9 routes on the outside, open in the middle of the field. And if Allen breaks contain, I mean, there's a quarterback had over 100 yards rushing 3 of the last 4 weeks. So the funny thing is Tom Brady this, Tom Brady that, and we get it. We understand why. But it's actually an interesting challenge for New England because the numbers may be pedestrian, but he makes so many plays with his feet. It's a unique challenge trying to defend Josh Allen, and this is the Patriots' first look at him.
One more game I want to touch on with you here on the NFL side, Brian. Game 113-114, Houston and Philadelphia. Houston, a 1.5-point favorite at open. Now Philadelphia favorite out there in the marketplace. And I made a big mistake here. I don't know what the look-ahead line was on this game, but Nick Foles and the Eagles going out and winning in L.A. against the Rams certainly has changed the perception of this Philadelphia team. All of a sudden, maybe Dallas a little bit scared about that precarious NFC East position. Philadelphia with that big win as a double-digit dog. Now they're a slight home favorite against a Houston team that a lot of people have been looking for reasons to bet against. What do you think about this game, which is now a huge one in the landscape of the NFL playoff picture?
Well, what a difference 11 days makes. I mean, Philly had a great case to beat Dallas and, get that fortunate bounce and Cooper gets the touchdown, or Philly would have had the ball. A, they'd have covered. B, they'd have had the ball with a chance to go down and tie it or win it. But it bounced through the defender and into Cooper's hands and they score. But all of a sudden, you're looking at this wild card picture. Seattle stubbing their toe has opened the door for the Eagles and for the Skins, and all of a sudden, here's a Philly team at the tail end of the year. You can say similar in one respect. I mean, Philly was home and cooled last year, but Nick Foles late in the year came in and gave them a spark, and Schwartz is a great defensive coordinator. Houston's got a lot on the line. I mean, Houston's sitting here, with a shot to get a bye, and obviously send New England on the road. But Philly's sitting here circling the wagons going, hey, wait a minute. We're literally right back in this thing. They are the defending Super Bowl champs. And the running game for Philly is certainly for fantasy fans really frustrating. But all of a sudden, Smallwood comes off a big game. And don't sleep on what Darren Sproles does for the Eagles. In passing situations and the occasional runs, he may only touch it a dozen times, Adam, but Sproles has impact on football games. And I do think this is a different Philadelphia team with Sproles in the lineup.
It's so interesting. I mean, I don't think Carson Wentz was the problem this year for Philadelphia. I mean, he wasn't great by any means coming off of the ACL. And, maybe the team did kind of think that there should be a little bit more loyalty to Nick Foles after the Super Bowl run and after the Eagles decided to retain him here as their Wentz insurance policy. But it just looked different, and it just felt different last week for the Eagles. And I do think to some degree as well, I mean, this said something about the Rams too. And we've been talking about the Rams here on the show that they have one concern, and it's the playoffs, and it's very clear at this point in time. But they do still have some defensive holes. They don't have a whole lot of depth at wide receiver. They've got their problems too. I wonder how people framed this Eagles win, and I think based on the betting market here, I think the Eagles are rightly getting the credit that they deserve.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm with you. And I would say this, in terms of Wentz, you can say, well, was he 100%? Maybe in the first half of the season, no, maybe never. But the one thing, when you watch the difference between Wentz and Foles, and it's always a pet peeve of mine. Honestly, right out of the gate, first series of every game or in the first couple series, I don't care who you are, go back and throw a bomb. I mean, that you have to make teams respect the pass downfield. And then it opens up passing lanes, even if it's incomplete and you punt. I'm telling you, if you watch Wentz all year long, everything was a slant route or an out. Wentz didn't stretch the field. Nick Foles, he's got a little gunslinger to him. The one thing Foles does is he'll throw it over the teams, to me, to open up the Eagles' offense over the course of 60 minutes.
I think it's an excellent point, and we'll see if he's able to have some success with that here against the Texans defense that you can throw on. As long as you're protected and upright, you can complete some passes down the field on this Texans defense. So should be a real good game there in that one as well. And I'm kind of glad because, at first I started looking at this NFL card, on Friday or Saturday and wasn't too impressed with it overall. And now, the way that things have kind of fallen a little bit in terms of the playoff picture, there are a couple of games that, draw my attention more than I thought they would. So hopefully we get a good Week 16 card here in the NFL. But, Brian, I want to transition over to NHL.
Real quick, Adam, I would throw at you this. I would look under the total in that game. If you look, the last couple of weeks, all right, okay, you get Dallas, the game at Dallas in Jerry's world, 29-23, and then the Rams game, gorgeous weather under the lights, 30-23. Now you're going to be going out, you're playing in gloomy Philadelphia, and you're back home, and everybody's remembering, we're seeing these high-scoring games from Philadelphia. The weather could be a thing. And listen, I think Schwartz will do something to dial up to try to diminish Hopkins. I know it's, easier said than done. But I think there could be a lot of moving the football, but teams really tighten it up once they get to the red zone, maybe more field goals than you'd expect. I like the under in that game.
All right, good thought there to wrap up the NFL side. And let's transition over to the NHL, Brian. And I want to ask you specifically about one spot tonight. Then I'll get your overall thoughts on the card because we've got a very big NHL card here tonight. Last night, Nashville was in Ottawa. They lose that game as a minus 170, 175 favorite to the Senators. Tonight, they play the Chicago Blackhawks. And in the past, that would have been a major look-ahead spot last night for Nashville, and who knows, maybe they fell victim to it a little bit anyway. But Chicago is just a terrible team this year. A lot of problems with them. They fired Joel Quenneville. Things have not gotten any better for them. When you talk about these spots that used to be significant, like going and playing at the UC against the Blackhawks, what do you think it means now when you go in there and you're playing a Chicago team that just isn't very good?
No, it's a fair point. I mean, Chicago's a mess, and they're getting old in front of your eyes. And in terms of that, oh boy, we're looking ahead to it. Especially, Nashville's walking in there. Well, they're looking forward to seeing us, and the fans are, going to come watch us play. I think it's more of the scheduling situation with the back-to-back nights, and back-to-back nights are really intriguing. They're just situations that are horrible. Sometimes back-to-back nights you get the road team, actually the home team is playing a game and then flying home for a team that's sitting there waiting for them. Sometimes those are gold mine spots. But you know what, Adam, you look at these scheduling things, and I really think it comes down to the quality of the team you're playing, the quality of the team that's involved in those scenarios. And don't sleep on the fact that, a lot of these teams, there's some really good backup goaltenders. I think the goaltending is a lot deeper in this league than it's ever been, where I just don't know that the drop-off from the backup on a lot of teams is so significant. You just had I'll just throw an example. I just watched that scenario unfold where Buffalo played Washington, and it was a great game, and they lost in overtime, and then had delays, travel concerns, and then had to play a late afternoon game. It was ridiculous. A horrible scheduling spot, and the backup for Buffalo played Linus Olmark, and they went in, and Eichel went nuts, and they beat Boston less than 24 hours in a backup situation with their backup goalie. So I think to the degree you got to know what the drop-off is from the starter to the backup in those back-to-back situations. And frankly, Nashville, if you got a Rinne to a Saros, what's the drop-off?
No, that's an excellent point there. And I know you like to talk about backup goaltenders in terms of looking for adjustments on the totals. So I know that's something that you pay attention to. And as you said, maybe the backups just a little bit better here this year, or, maybe a growing trend where we've got some more goaltending depth league-wide. One thing I will mention here, just ran a quick query that teams on a back-to-back against a team playing with one or more days rest, 52 and 68 here on the season so far. So the team in the back-to-back only winning 43.3% of the time against a rested opponent. We've got 3 of those games tonight: Ducks, Rangers, Predators, Blackhawks, Islanders, Coyotes on the card. And, one of the other situations we should talk about,
Adam, Brian. I just want to jump in real quickly. What were those numbers again?
Let me check. I actually just closed that tab.
No, it was like
52 and 68 straight up, 43.3%. Teams in a back-to-back playing against an opponent with one or more days rest.
Yeah, but then you look at the units and what was the number, and the number's inflated. I mean, so there are defined opportunities in some of those spots.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you look at the Islanders tonight, and this is a doubly interesting game because Arizona is coming back off of a road trip. We isolated a spot on the show and on the videos last week about Arizona playing an afternoon game in Raleigh on Sunday. They lost that game 3-0. Now first home game back for them, but it's against an Islanders team with an outright upset last night in Denver, playing at altitude for the one and only time this season. So that's a really interesting game there. But, Brian, I do want to ask you here, from a situational standpoint, coming up here next Monday, the league goes dark for 3 days for the Christmas holiday, off on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. So as we look long-term here later in the week, are there any betting angles you're looking to take advantage of because that holiday break is looming?
Not so much because of that, Adam. I think it's the time and they talk about there's the trade freeze. Very rarely are there deals around the holidays. Even teams that are in disarray generally kind of take care of the players. I watched this league this year. It's almost like watching a baseball season. And you look at some of the streaks that are out there. I don't remember this league. A team or two, but you're finding 4 or 5 or 6 teams at a time that are riding the wave of a streak. The Caps have won 5, the Jets have won 5, Calgary's won 3, Anaheim, San Jose have won 4. The Kings are a disaster. They've lost 4. The Flyers have lost 4. Funny, it's almost like, trying to identify where a skid's coming and get on board with it early. I think it's a little unique in that vein. And then the other thing, what I will tell you that I think is something I'll be watching for, somebody was just telling me yesterday there are over 20 guys that are going at better than a point-a-game clip. I mean, that's crazy. But is that sustainable? I think you got the goalie equipment. We saw maybe some higher-scoring games, across the board in the first 6 weeks. Then it slowed down a little bit. But equipment, or I don't care. Hockey's hockey, bud. It's the same thing every year. You get by Christmas. January's a little kind of sketchy, but late January, with the trade deadline looming, these games are going to change. These games are just going to become more defensive in nature. Teams are going to be scoreboard watching. You get a 2-2 game with 14 minutes to go, and it's a division game. I got news here. These teams are playing dump and chase hockey, hoping to draw a penalty and maybe get a goal. with special teams. But across the board, the mindset changes, the points, in their mind mean more. And then coaches start working towards getting the team to play the right way, because that's the way you got to play when the playoffs get here. All these things that are new and different, shiny new toys and analytics and all this stuff, good, great, good for you. I got news for you. It ain't never going to change. Okay? Yeah, the games are going to tighten up at the end of January.
One last thing I want to ask you about here, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights. They come off a 4-game road trip, host the New York Islanders on Thursday. The Islanders playing a third road game in 4 nights off stops in Denver and Arizona. And then they take on Vegas. Of course, Barry Trotz returning to Vegas, where he won the Stanley Cup last year with the Capitals. What do you think about that spot on Thursday night for Vegas going up against the Islanders?
That's a brutal one because you're right. The Islanders 3 games in 4 nights. But then Vegas is playing the first game home from a long Eastern road trip, which can be a grisly game to play for any team. So there are, chinks in the armor or fade opportunities for both of these teams in this spot. The one thing, and then there are subplots to the game. First of all, Marc-Andre Fleury, they've been riding the guy like Secretariat. Finally, he got a day off and didn't play the last game at the road trip. So Fleury finally got a bit of rest. But I will tell you, the subplot in here is Barry Trotz is coming in as head coach of the Islanders, and this was a guy that had a blueprint to beat Vegas. And the Caps did it in the final. They did it against Vegas this year. We've seen a couple of teams mirror that. And basically, I would look for the Islanders to do the same thing. If Vegas runs around in their own end, if Fleury sees the first shot, he's going to stop it. But Trotz, they had a great scheme last year in the final, and that would be the Ovechkins of the world or Backstrom or whoever it was. They'd have a great scoring opportunity, and Adam, they wouldn't shoot. They would hold on to it, and then they'd make a cross-ice pass, cross-crease pass. They got Fleury on the move. I would look for Trotz to be, and they got guys that can light the lamp. Trotz is the X factor for the game in terms of what he dials up specifically to go against Vegas.
Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. How can people catch those 2 shows, Brian?
KSHP.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Blessing. And the shows are archived for you at sportsbookradio.com. In fact, we'll have a little chat about the Islanders today. We'll have Brian Compton from NHL.com at 1 p.m. Pacific time talking about the Islanders on their road trip and coming to Vegas, so we look forward to that. And I'll be doing videos today. We'll do Week 16 in the NFL. And, Adam, I think we'll focus on the Friday and Saturday bowl games with one of our videos today for BangTheBook.com. Some players aren't playing. There are some bowls that are historically high scoring. And then there are subplots for motivation and a lot of ways to get after it. But it's the last wave of the, I don't know what you call them, lower tier or middle tier bowls. And then things are going to really ratchet up. But they're good betting opportunities, and we'll focus on those games in that video today.
Definitely make sure that you go to youtube.com, search Bang the Book, and go ahead and subscribe to that page, and it'll let you know when Brian's videos are up. Brian Blessing, Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, at Brian Blessing on Twitter. Appreciate the time as always, sir. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you again next week.
All right, Adam. Have a great day, buddy.